And when he put his hand on my back, it was sort of like the father that I never had. You know what I mean? It was like this guy who had the compassion to come up and say, you know, you're not being a wuss. You're a man, has these feelings. And man, you know, if you're going to be a decent actor, you know, you want to make it in this town, you got to find this kind of emotion. If you can't, you're just full of shit.
You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm Trevor Algott, and coming up in episode 258 today, an encore interview series with one of the most impressive humans on the planet, P90X creator Tony Horton. This is an interview series that I've been wanting to bring back from the vaults of the podcast for a long time now, and I figured that right now, with all the calorie-stuffed, time-crunched holidays, having somebody like Tony Horton, again, creator of P90X, life-changing stuff, having him on the show again is the perfect opportunity to reconnect with a guy who got his start really as an out-of-shape actor with zero prospects. From subsisting on Cheerios and yogurt as a street mime in Santa Monica, to the early acting class that left him sobbing on the floor, to the sobering feedback that he got from an agent, the feedback that ultimately put him on the path to becoming a celebrity trainer, this first part of our conversation with Tony will remind you that nothing is impossible and that there are no excuses. Stick around. Support for this episode of Inside Acting comes from Rehearsal Pro. The next version of Rehearsal, the essential app for actors, is now available in the iTunes App Store. If you want to learn your lines, be off book for your auditions, explore your character, make stronger choices, and do a bunch of other cool stuff, go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now, where you can learn all about the great new features in this newest version of Rehearsal, a groundbreaking app designed by actors for actors. And as you know, we cannot recommend it enough. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 258. We took a week off last week for a couple different reasons, not the least of which was my car deciding to just basically stop working in the middle of the street on Thanksgiving Day. So a lot of things going on in the Inside Acting world, but we're really happy to be back. And like I said in the intro, I'm really excited to be bringing back this interview with Tony Horton. It's one of my all-time favorites, not only because Tony kind of completely changed my life, but because I think his philosophy is probably the like one philosophy that you could possibly ever want to have to enjoy success in your life. And as you'll hear over the next three parts as we revisit this interview series from many years ago, he's a guy that did not come by his success by accident. Everything that he has created in his life comes down to a few basic principles and, you know, just treating people right, learning to say yes and responding to the feedback, being open and vulnerable, and showing up for people is really what his work and his life and his legacy is all about. So before we jump into that interview, part one of that interview, I want to take a quick moment to welcome some new members that have jumped on board and joined the inner circle of the podcast. Michelle Aguilar, Colin Allen, Kurt McCarthy, Donica Burmester, and Ian Coleman. Welcome, guys. A couple of you I know personally, a couple of you I've just interacted with online, and a couple of you I don't know. Actually, the math doesn't add up there, but you guys get the idea. I'm really happy to have a nice, diverse mix of people joining us inside the membership, supporting the podcast. You guys make this thing possible. Thank you so very much for contributing to the continued production of this thing and for connecting with all of us. Inside the membership, speaking of, Freddie Velateo, who's a longtime listener and supporter of the podcast, has a great post about stepping into his producer role for the very first time, producing a show called Motherfucker with the Hat. Maybe you guys have heard of it. Anyway, he's asking for some advice, some feedback, and I would love to hear what people have to say about that as a producer, because as Emily Grace, all the way back, it must have been almost 100 episodes ago now, talked about how if you're a producer as well as an actor, you kind of can't ever have an excuse for not working. And I think that's a really good point. So would love to hear people's thoughts on Freddie's questions about stepping into producing a great play that was on Broadway a year or two ago with Chris Rock and some other celebrity whose name is escaping me at the moment. So that's pretty exciting. And also in the membership, we're going to be kicking off in the beginning of January an Artist's Way Inside Acting Group. Really excited about this. Longtime listener and supporter Grace Gordon is going to be leading this group for us, and we're going to be connecting inside the membership, possibly offline as well, going through week by week, chapter by chapter, Julia Cameron's self-guided creativity course, The Artist's Way. And anybody listening who follows me on social media will know that I recently completed the course all by myself. It took me probably like 16 or 17 weeks to do the 12 weeks, but life-changing stuff. I'm a student for life. I'm still doing the morning pages in the artist date, and I probably will for the rest of my life. Very subtle but powerful shifts in my spiritual self, really, to be completely honest. So look forward to that. We're going to have prizes. We're going to have lots of cool stuff going on. So that's going to be happening first week of January inside the IAP membership. And lastly, there is a question from Connor that I wanted to respond to on this episode, because he wrote in a while ago and I responded via email, and I just wanted to air it on the actual podcast as well. So Connor writes in and he says that something he consistently runs into in this industry on this path is the constant mental ups and downs that come with being an actor. I'm sure everybody listening can relate to that. He says, I feel like because actors are more in tune with our emotional and spiritual selves, that makes them experience higher highs and lower lows, which is both a blessing and a curse. And he was wondering if any of us have tips or approaches on how to handle life's low points. To be more specific, he says, I'm not necessarily just referring to the lows that are associated with rejection. Rejection happens and I feel pretty comfortable dealing with that. More of my lows are associated with sudden decreases in my own perceived abilities and a sudden lack of self-confidence based on being hard on myself. One thing I've always loved about my own work ethic is how hard I work, and no matter what, I continually push myself in my craft. But do you guys have any tips for dealing with the mental ups and downs that I feel like are pretty specific to this industry? So, Connor, great question. As you know, this is something that I struggle with a lot. I personally am a really pretty sensitive guy. I've learned to own this about myself. I'm very impressionable and very sensitive, and the smallest little changing in somebody's inflection or the word usage that they use, things that may just sort of coast over the head of other people, I take them in and I make up stories about them, and I all of a sudden, am convincing myself that I'm a worthless human being. So I've been there, man. And I wanted to respond to this on the air by saying, number one, I feel you. And I don't think that's something that's ever going to go away, but I do think that we can become more evolved in how we handle that. And like you said, it is a curse, but also very, very much a blessing. So I responded to Connor with an email, and I basically said, for me, and I'll go ahead and just start this off by referencing The Artist's Way. For me, the combined practice of morning pages, which for anybody who's not familiar, are 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing, typically done first thing in the morning, in a notebook by hand, just to kind of brain dump or unload your psyche or your soul or your heart. And that combined with a regular meditation practice, so journaling and meditation, has made all the difference in the world for me. Carrie Bechet said it in her episodes that she loves being an actor because it is the most self-examined life. And I really love the way she put that, because that's really what it's all about for us as actors. Our job is to really probe the depths of our soul, and by extension, the soul of human beings, to figure out really what that texture actually feels like. So what I wrote to Connor is I said, for me, a daily meditation practice has been absolutely life-changing, and I love Headspace. Headspace is an app and a website with guided meditations. It's a pay-to-play app, but I think it's well worth the investment. I spend $70 a year for the opportunity to access all the guided meditations. And it basically teaches you how to meditate. It's pretty accessible and easy. There's no crazy like sound effects or binaural, biohacks or anything like that. It's just you and Andy, the guy who created it, guiding you through a meditation and silence, your breath, your thoughts, and finding a space between those thoughts and being okay with it. So check it out, headspace.com. Andy's a former Buddhist monk. And I say former only because he's no longer in Tibet practicing as a monk. He's now living in California, running the Headspace business. But through meditation, my experience with it, I've learned to disassociate for the most part. I mean, this is a practice, but I've learned to dissociate from my very reactionary tendencies, things that trigger me. I've learned to sort of slow down and notice the trigger response happening, to sort of step away from it and seeing the story start to take shape when somebody says something that I interpret in a very negative way. So I see it, I learn to sort of unplug from that and practice on a daily basis, really, just being a more emotionally consistent human being. So when I notice the emotional response to something, I've learned to simply identify it. Hey, there's anger, or wow, okay, I'm aware right now I'm experiencing frustration. Oh, look, there's fear, there's anxiety. Oh, wow, I feel hurt right now. I feel despondency, I feel despair. And just the act of identifying that seems to sort of defuse it a lot. And then after I identify that, I take a deep breath. I recenter myself in the present moment, usually just by making a conscious effort to feel my feet in my shoes, to feel the wind on my skin, the sunlight on my skin, or wherever I am, just to feel the textures of the space that I'm in. And then I move forward intentionally in that awareness, just knowing that this thing that I'm experiencing is simply a feeling and it exists only inside my head. So it's been an immensely supportive practice to be in that space. The combination of journaling and meditation practice every day has been a way that I've found very effectively helps me navigate the low lows that you're talking about, Connor. So highly recommend that. Hope those two practices are something that you find supportive as you implement and experiment with them in your life. And anybody else listening would love to hear your 2 cents or your input on how you deal with being a sensitive person. I think most of us listening can probably relate to that title, sensitive person. If not, kudos to you. You're awesome. I'm jealous. All right, guys. So that's it for this first part of the episode. Let's jump into part 1 of our encore conversation, which is just a fancy way of saying our repeat conversation with Tony Horton. Very excited to be bringing this back into the consciousness, into the community, especially at a time when most of us are going to be sort of taking a dump on our health and then looking up a month from now and wondering what happened. So use this as fuel for your fire to stay on track with your health and fitness goals, and I'll see you on the other side.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Trev, AJ, and Jen sitting here with someone this is probably a milestone for the podcast. You know, one of the reasons we started this thing was so that we'd have a good excuse to basically reach out to and sit down with people that we really admire and whose work we enjoy and that we'd like to just talk to, and basically our personal heroes. And today we are excited to be sitting here across from P90X creator Tony Horton. So, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Well, I got to say, it's very exciting. I want to thank you all for invading my home. Yeah, so I know your plot. This is how you hang out with people you admire, so you can come to their place and see how they decorate. I know. I
actually already put a few DVDs in my bag.
Yeah. You want to say, is the guy? Yeah, to see if I'm actually overweight or fit or not.
Unfortunately,
should we reveal that we had a pull-up contest prior to this?
It was a sobering experience for you.
No. Well, this is how it's going to begin. All right,
we're already bringing up the
ready. Let fire away, brother.
Yeah, it's so cool to be sitting across from you as somebody who's done PNX basically for a year straight. But
you're a wise man.
I quit my gym membership the day the fourth day. By the time the yoga DVD came around, I was like, I am convinced that working out in front of my TV in the living room is the best way to go. And I canceled my gym membership. But like I said, I want to spend less time talking about that stuff and more talking about.
Oh, but wait.
Oh,
you can talk about all you want. No, I know the reason why we're here, to kind of give folks a sense of how does a guy, with a C- average end up with a fitness empire.
Yeah,
give us a crazy story, really.
Yeah, give us a feel for your journey. I mean, are you originally from LA?
Not at all. I'm a New Englander, and I grew up in Rhode Island. I grew up in a place called Westerly, Rhode Island. And so I wasn't there very long. My father was in the military at the time. He was a tank commander, so we were stationed. I started in Rhode Island, ended up in Fort Knox, Kentucky, which who knew that was a tank base. And then we weren't there much longer before we were in Schofield Barracks in Honolulu on the Big Island. And I was a wee lad. And from there, Rowayton, Connecticut, Cumberland, Rhode Island, Syracuse, New York, and then we settled in 5th grade for me in Trumbull, Connecticut. So I grew up in Trumbull from 5th grade through 12th grade. And then I went off to the University of Rhode Island where I majored in beer and alcohol. And I went to some classes too. That was cool. But, as a young kid, a lot of people don't realize that I bounced around a bunch before I settled into Trumbull at 5th grade. And it was tough. You went from school to school to school, new teachers, new friends, new everything. And as a little guy, you didn't really understand why you were having such a tough time. And I had a really tough time. Like I said, I almost got held back in 3rd grade. I was a terrible student because there were different teaching techniques, and then of course the new guy always gets the crap beat out of him from the bullies. And I was a little kid. I was a thin little guy and not athletic at all. My father was a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he was a 3-sport captain, but he didn't like the whole process to get to that point. He didn't like the coaches and the trainers and even his father gave him a pretty hard time about being perfect all the time. And I didn't take to that very well. I was kind of a rebel on that stuff of being told what to do. I was on the football team, and as most people have heard me tell the story, I was really more of a tackling dummy Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday for the game, I was taking stats, for the most part. And I would rumble around in the dirt and the dust and the mud during warm-ups so that I at least appeared to have been in the game. So it was a funky, hard, brutal childhood. Not like some. I mean, some kids have it much worse. But I just recall being very depressed a lot and very, very, frightened of getting the crap beat out of me. I had my lunch money taken, the whole bit. It's so funny. But come later on in high school, things got more interesting. I got more confidence. I was an actor. I was in Wilderness, the play Wilderness, in 12 Angry Men. I had like the 2 absolute smallest parts you could have in both. But I was on stage, and it was a blast just to be there.
When were you bit by the acting bug, as it were? Or was it something you just kind of fell into?
Well, being incredibly insecure and having somewhat of a sense of humor at that age, I discovered that if I made people laugh, then that was my out from being, frightened and struggling and all the things that went with the kind of kid that I was at that stage. And I would put on these little skits for my parents and neighbors, and in college I even took because I was so afraid of speech, and I could learn my lines, the few that I usually got, and that was pretty easy. But I took a advanced mime class. I mean, I took an introductory mime class, an advanced mime class, and then a master mime class. I was fascinated with creating things that weren't there. You know, I mean, whether it be leaning or walking in the wind, or walking inside the box, the glass box, all that crap. You know, I mean, we look at mime now and think, that's pretty lame. But I was a big fan of Marcel Marceau. I mean, how many kids in high school, college, in the late 70s were Marcel Marceau fans? Hello, nerd! But the guy who taught the class was really cool, you know what I mean? And most of my teachers in high school weren't. They were just pretty pathetic, really, in my experience. But he was really into it, you know? I mean, just his level of skill was so amazing, and I just loved that type of movement, that isolation movement, where part of your body is completely relaxed and some other part of your body is trying to create something that's not there. And I used to do these shows, in the Cup Room and sort of the main stage in the Commons at night, with whatever, half the campus would be there because there's nothing else to do. The university was in the middle of a turf farm, so it wasn't like we had a big city or cool like UCLA or USC or other schools. So we would do these. I do these bits, and they were a little X-rated sometimes. They were like, I was 1 minute I'm doing a glass box, next minute I'm walking in the wind, and the next time I'm surrounded by 3 naked women. It was fun to kind of create that visually for people, and I'll let you use your imagination as to what was going on stage. Yeah, so a lot of like open mouth kissing and ass grabbing and pulling off bras and all this crazy stuff, and they were always usually drunk and stuff, and I would play ELO or Beatles, like Magical Mystery Tour or whatever was popular at the time. And a lot of acid jazz. I just played some really cool music, and I would spend hours, that's why I got C- in class, because I was spending all my time working on my mime bits.
Wow.
For folks. But that was how I got my initial actor
wow
thing.
And then that parlayed somehow into stand-up comedy, and then somehow you got to LA.
Well, after struggling on the East Coast all the way through to college, really, I was never, like I said, never a great student. URI was called UR High, just to give you a sense of what the vibe was back then. And now it's all that whole energy is gone. Nobody can drink under 21. You get caught with pot, you get busted. With all that struggle and all that strife and all those problems, I kind of meandered my way through most of it. I survived. And then a good buddy of mine called me one day and said, what are you doing for the summer? I said, I'm going to wait tables in Boston. Like I had a job in Boston to wait tables. Yes, moving on up to the So that was kind of sad and pathetic. But the last thing I wanted to do was have to go home and live with my parents. I refused. After 4 years of college, that was the best I could do. No prospects whatsoever. I had $400 in my bank account. $400. And my friend Bob Hennessy, who works with me now, he does a lot of my development stuff and manages some projects for me now. Called me up and said, I'm going to California. I'm going to Huntington Beach for the summer. You want to come? And with zero hesitation, I said, I'm in. And I ran out of money in Colorado Springs, which is really weird because I was only there about 3 or 4 days ago. So it was weird to be in a town 3 days ago. And in 1980, last time I was there, and I had $0 in my pocket. But I had my mime outfit and my white face, and I put on my black hat, my black vest, and black shirt, and black pants, and black shoes, and did the whole mime face thing, and went out in the streets, and put the hat down. And in about a day and a half, I made about $125, and I thought that's enough. We can get going now. Uh-huh. And we ended up in Huntington Beach, and we were in sunny Southern California, man. In the early 80s, so many amazing, beautiful women, which is the reason why we were there. But we never got hooked up with any of them because we were such East Coast dorks. I still had my Tom Selleck handlebar mustache. Yes. You know what I mean? Yes. And they would say, and then everybody thought I was a narc. Yeah. My neighbors thought I was a narc. I go to the club and they go, "That guy's a narc," because I had the conservative, pale blue button-down shirt. Everybody else back in those days, in the 1980s, every single person, all the time. I don't care who you were, whether you were a cop or a garbage man. Everybody had Hawaiian shirts. Hawaiian. Everybody's wearing Hawaiian. We're in Southern California. But it was just the look, you know what I mean? It was like baggy pants, flip-flops, and Hawaiian shirts. And I'm sitting there with pleated jean shorts. Hell.
Pleated jean shorts?
Yeah. I think I made that up, but I thought it was going to be funny. And that and my my pink or my light purple or my blue Oxford button-down shirt. It was pretty sad.
Wow.
So, of course, we looked like narcs.
So you came out here basically, and you were like, "I'm going to give this acting thing a go."
Yeah.
And it worked for a little while. I mean, you had a couple bookings, but nothing huge. And then you were saying that you were studying with this teacher, and he was giving you some advice to maybe, I don't know, you almost made it sound like try something else because it's such a difficult industry.
Well, this great teacher, this really amazing man, and I believe he still teaches classes at the Debbie Reynolds Studios over in Burbank, Daryl Hickman. I mean, God, he's got to be in his 70s or maybe even in his 80s. I don't know. Have to Google Daryl. But he had this amazing technique. I'll never forget, the first day in class, frightened to death, driving from the West Side all the way to Burbank to go to the Debbie Reynolds dance studio to take a class with this guy. And I knew about this class for a year or two before I finally had the cojones to show up. Again, I was had no self-esteem, really insecure, just assumed that I was going to be the worst one there. And here was the very first exercise. And I know how many actors are listening in and going to go, oh, yeah, been there, done that, So Daryl's technique was kind of a multi-layered technique where you're kind of building, being present, being in the moment. That was always really important, reacting as opposed to just acting out your lines and all these different things. I can barely remember a lot of them. But one of them was, you've got your lines. And so a decent director, 9 times out of 10, is going to want something different out of you every time. They don't want a line reading. They don't want the same thing over and over again. They want to see, they want to see your technique. I don't care if it's Meisner or whatever it is. And so he said, here's what I want you to do. So I don't know, there were probably 35 neophytes in this room from all around the country, all showed up for this 10-week introductory Daryl Hickman acting class. So all he wanted you to do was go to the front of the room and stand there with 2 feet on the ground, your weight on either foot, with your arms by your side, and just be open and be clear. And his job was to ask you how you felt standing there in front of the group, first day. Like, what are your feelings? And it was kind of funny to watch people shift their weight and fold their arms. And he would say, no, you're leaning on one side. Just put your weight evenly on both feet. Put your arms down. Stop folding your arms. And so how do you feel? I feel good. I feel fired up. No, you don't. And he would just say, I want you to be authentic. I want you to be in the moment. I'm in the moment. I feel good. And you would get all these people who are doing the song and dance to try to, cover up whatever insecurities and fear they were having. And it was funny to watch. I think I was about the 4th one that went up. And I just went up there and I thought, I'm just going to do this thing. I'm just going to do this thing. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to, tell everybody how awesome I feel. I feel awesome, No, I'm not Donald Trump, who's full of crap. Oh, sorry for those of you that like Donald Trump. I'm just going to be a real person in the moment, be authentic, and stand here. And it was such a bizarre moment, right? So I stood there, and he said, I just want you to be there. Just breathe. Look around. What does that feel like? And I think I said something along the lines of, odd. It feels odd. All right. What does odd feel like? And we kept going. He got me to this place where, I said, yeah, I'm scared here, standing here. I don't feel good. My stomach is in knots. I don't want to screw this up. I'm trying to just be in the moment, be authentic, and listen. I'm trying to listen and not just talk. He says, how does that feel? Take your time. You don't have to answer right away, After a little bit, I felt this bizarre combination of emotions just hit me like a wave. And one of them was a form of release. I felt relaxed, but I also felt super emotional, like on the verge. And he could see it, and he'd say, that right there. What is that? And I don't know, the lips started to quiver, then the chin started to quiver. And he said, that. Don't you let go of that. Let that happen. Let that happen. That's real. That's what acting is. That's in the moment. That's authentic. Just let it go, man. Just let it go. Boom. Before I knew it, I was on the ground, sobbing, heaving, sobbing, tears coming off both my eyes like a river, like a baby. And I remember the floor. I'll never forget. It was a wooden floor, a hardwood floor. And it was dusty, like these acting classes in these studios. People are moving around props and stuff, and they probably haven't dusted it. And I remember a puddle was forming a puddle of tears was forming on the floor. I mean, crazy, man. And then he got out of his seat. He came over and he put his hand on my back. He said, let that happen. Let that go. That's it. And when he put his hand on my back, it was sort of like the father that I never had. You know what I mean? It was like this guy who had the compassion to come up and say, you know, you're not being a wuss. You're a man, has these feelings. And man, you know, if you're going to be a decent actor and, you know, you want to make it in this town, you got to find this kind of emotion. If you can't, you're just full of shit. You know, you're going to end up doing shitty fucking soap operas or something, you know. So, not to say that soap opera acting isn't great. It's a beautiful step onto your movie career. But anyway, whatever. Do they even do soap operas anymore? I think it's all game shows.
There's a few left.
It's Ellen. It's all
four.
Ellen.
Yeah.
But so it was wild, man. When he put his hand on my back, I started sobbing even more, you know. And it was a heck of a first day. I just felt like I was in a room by myself, and somebody gave me permission to feel what I wanted to feel without any judgment. And it was incredible. And I thought, damn, man, I'm coming back next week. So I get up, and he turns to the class. Who wants to go next? And everybody said, F that, man. I ain't not following that. I'm not following that. And you would think, though, which was interesting, one or two people got up and kind of tried to get there. But everybody else got back on the whole hands on the hips and arms crossed and shifting their weight and telling their bullshit story. You know? And, you know, then I had the commercial agent, and I went out on a bunch of commercials because at that age I looked like just about everybody else, you know, that was going on these beer and car ads, you know what I mean? One after another, beer car.
Sounds about right.
You know, and, right. And that's
changed.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. You know, and that's just the way it was. And other things, too. I mean, I did a Lowenbrow commercial, and I did a 7-Up commercial, and I did a Chevy car commercial. And, man, I remember getting those gigs just thinking, that's it, I'm in. Let's just going to roll. And then you would be put on a veil. You just feel, you know, that everybody who's an actor knows what being put on a veil means. That's it, I'm in. What's it down to? It's like you and 13 guys. Yeah. It's not really a veil. Right. It's me and another guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, of course, I got put on a veil so many times and never booked those gigs. It was so frustrating. But, you know, I was in the 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas. I had it. If you look really quick, there's a scene where I get an arrow in the eye. I played one of the man-eating characters in that. And another scene with me eating human flesh. It was really jerky, but
wow.
You know, you were in Canada, but I was also up there training a lot of the actors. You know, I didn't train Antonio, but I trained all the European actors to keep them in shape for the film.
So how did the training thing work its way into it? Because you were kind of a mime theater geek almost, it sounds like, and then you're a personal trainer as well. So when did that evolve or come about?
You know, after Huntington Beach and after, you know, sleeping on my buddy's sister's floor for the summer, we decided we should, you know, either we're going to go home back to the East Coast, and it was about September at that point. My parents were saying, okay, you're done screwing around, come back east where you belong and get a real job, you know. And at that point, you know, I'm calling them up for $100. I just need $100 because I can do this little job. I'm going to build these cabinets with I had a sander and a hammer and a friggin' pair of tweezers. You know, I found a way to make these things work. And reluctantly, my parents would send me, you know, $119.95 for a belt sander and whatever, you know, whatever I needed. And occasionally I had to call for rent, you know, and at some point I realized that I had to stop doing that. You know, either make it on your own or you don't. And so I had every odd job imaginable. I was a pantomime on the pier. I mean, there were nights where I was out of money, and I'd maybe go wait tables for a week, and I'd go, I hate this place, I'm out of here. I used to wait tables all through college, and I hated it. And I actually worked at the Bel Air Country Club for a couple of years when I just finally, you know, swallowed the pill and said, I got to do this gig because it's steady money. Mm-hmm. So I waited tables at the Bel Air Country Club. I would build furniture. I was a handyman. I would go down to the pier when I was out of money. There was one night in particular, I'll never forget, I had no food, and I hadn't eaten since the day before. And I couldn't borrow any more money from anybody, and I wasn't going to go panhandle, so I put on my mime outfit. I went down out to Santa Monica, went down to the pier, down to the Venice Pier, and into Westwood, you know, when Westwood used to hum at night. And I put that hat down. You know, these young kids were drunk, and they were throwing crap at me and stealing my hat. I mean, it was pretty brutal, but I needed to get that $25, and I would go down to I lived on Bay Street in Santa Monica, Bay Street in Maine, in Santa Monica, and there was a liquor store. I think it's still there. And they would sell yogurt and Cheerios, and I would buy enough yogurt and Cheerios to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a couple of days.
Wow.
Lived on yogurt and Cheerios. And, man, it was brutal, you know. And I worked retail, and I was a go-go dancer at Chippendales for a summer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, $23.50 an hour, man. That was big bucks. Waiting tables during the day, go dancing at night, baby. You know, popping and locking and doing all that mime stuff on a little box, a box that was like 3 by 3 by 4. It was like 4 feet high, and I used to stand there on the corner of the dance floor. I'll never forget. You know, one of my buddies came in from Minneapolis, and he looked at it, my buddy Tom, and he says, "Does Tony's father know that his son makes a living dancing on a box at a club?" I don't think his father knows about this. Yeah, and they didn't know about that.
Wow.
But yeah, so I had every odd job in the world, and then one day I was working at the Bel Air Country Club. You know what I mean? And I was doing the waiting tables thing and putting on the monkey suit, the whole bit. And a friend of mine had a pretty cool job working for Julia Phillips. Julia Phillips co-produced with her husband, John Phillips, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You can see that poster in the room. Where is it? Up there.
There it is, right above you. Yeah.
And The Sting with Redford and Newman. And what was the other movie? And Taxi Driver. And he got a cool job working for Dolly Parton as a writer. And kind of an upgrade from being a PA. He was also an actor. And he said, "Hey, look, there's an opening. I know you don't want to wait tables anymore. Do you want my job? I'll have you introduce you to Julia." And I said, "Sure." And she was a taskmaster, man. It was a brutal gig, driving all over town, delivering scripts, changing light bulbs, feeding the cat, doing laundry. You know, it was brutal.
Oh, jeez.
But it was pretty good pay. And at that point, I had my agent, and I was not in great shape. I was probably the worst shape I was in a long time. Little belly, skinny little arms. And I remember my agent saying, and you know what, you guys as actors, your agent, you expect your agent, if they're going to actually get on the phone and call you, you just do what they say. And they say, "Hey man," they said, "you got to get in better shape if you want to get more gigs. You're looking a little crappy, And right away I joined a gym. So, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to the gym, or I'd go after my gig over at Fox. And Harlan Goodman, who was a music producer at that time, was working with Julia. And he was my co-boss. So Julia was one, and he was the other, and running around for the two of them. And she didn't notice a thing. She didn't care. But he noticed. He says, "Geez, man, you're getting yoked. Your shoulders are bigger, your arms are bigger, your stomach is flatter. What are you doing?" And the cool thing about the job was they let me go on auditions. I've got an audition for whatever. And they let me go, just make sure you get all your stuff done. And so he was noticing that I was changing. And so he said, "Can you do that for me?" And I had never trained anybody before. I'd never done that ever, And I thought, I'll just, he said, "You can charge me for that." I think I charged him $15 an hour, thinking, I'll just go for it, man. $15 an hour. I mean, that's a lot of money. He didn't even balk, of course. And so 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we would go to my buddy's gym in his garage, the guy who used to have the same job, but now is a writer for Dolly Parton. And I'd train him. I'd do the bench press and push-ups and pull-ups and hack squats and lunges and whatever. And I got him in phenomenal shape. And at some point, I realized, wow, I might be able to do this for more people, because he was thrilled. He was thrilled with the results. He never got in great shape before. He was pretty regular. I made it fun, much like I do with P90X. So people were noticing him. Who did that? Tony Horton. I got to, So all of a sudden, I'm training him in the morning. I'm doing my PA gig all day at Fox, and then at night, I'm training 2 or 3 others. Eventually, he left Fox, left working for Julia. They just had a tough time doing the deal with anybody. And he went back to East End management and back into music. So he's there walking down the hall, and in the other direction is Tom Petty. And Tom Petty sees Harlan and says, "Hey, Harlan, you look great. How'd you get so fit?" Tom's from Gainesville. "Sorry, Tom, you don't really talk like that. It's the best I can do is my Gainesville accent." He said, "I'm working out with Tony Horton. I need that Tony Horton. I got a tour coming up. I got like 4 months. I got to get ready." I sound more like Forrest Gump. My name is Forrest Gump. People call me Forrest Gump. But boom. I'm here all week. Or at least for the next 40 minutes. And so I'll never forget, man. Tom Petty called my apartment, my little crappy apartment in Santa Monica, my rent-control apartment, and my roommate Bob picked up the phone, and the guy John, who worked for Dolly at that point, was a practical joker. He was always, calling up and saying he was somebody else, and you pick up the phone and you have a conversation with somebody you're not, or he'd hide underneath your car for an hour and a half. So when you went down there, he would reach out and grab your leg. He was he was from San Diego, man. He was crazy. Just a lot of fun though. And so Bob picked up the phone. Hi, it's Tom Petty. I'm looking for Tony Horton. And then Bob, would put his hand over the receiver. I think it's Perpich. I think he thinks he's screwing with us. I go, hang up the phone, man. I know he's done. Boop, phone rings. Hi, it's Tom Petty. Somebody hung up on me. I'm looking for Tony Horton. And of course, Bob goes, dude, I think this is really Tom Petty. I think the guy saying he's Tom Petty is Tom Petty. Give me the phone. Hello? JP, dude, what are you doing? I know it's you. Hi, it's Tom Petty. I'm a friend of Harlan Goodman's. Oh, my God. It's Tom Petty. Hello? Is this Tom Petty? Yeah, it's Tom Petty. Is this Tony Horton? Yeah. I need to get trained. Can you train me? I got a tour coming up. I'm a friend of Harlan's. He looks great. Okay, yeah. Can you come tomorrow? Yeah. I took on the address. He lived in Woodland Hills at the time. Beautiful, cool, rock and roll pad. Beautiful place. I met him and I got him going and I got him a life cycle and a heavy bag and a bench and some dumbbells and we just did the basics. And he was in just the worst shape in the world. I had never worked with anybody who was so out of shape. But I had 3 months. And he got stronger and stronger, and his belly went away, and his arms got really lean. It got really vascular, and the big thing was, it wasn't about the aesthetics so much anymore. It wasn't about the look that he was going for. It was about the energy that he had. He just had a buttload of energy. He just felt great. So he went out on that tour that year and just killed it. Like these Springsteen-like, 3-hour shows. The rest of the band's like, what are you doing, man? I feel great. Let's do another one. So it was really fun to see that. And I went on tour. I was on tour for the New Jersey, New York, Long Island section of the tour. I got to ride on the bus with him and his wife and his young kids at the time, and got up in the rafters, way up. They were all outdoor venues, and it was really cool to kind of be there and watch him do his thing. And then, we'd get up usually like around 11, pretty luxurious, go to the gym around 1. Then we'd all go to sound check, and he'd do the show. We repeated that for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
It's fun being kind of a groupie right there and watching him do his thing. And we came back from that tour, and everybody saw what had happened to him. And so all of a sudden I'm training. My one of my weeks was Billy Idol, because Billy and Tom had the same management company. Billy Idol, Tom Petty, Stevie Nicks, Stephen Stills from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Sean Connery. Submarines don't react well to bullets. That's the only thing I do. It's pretty bad. And then Shirley MacLaine, and there were a bunch of others, Allison Janney and Bryce Dallas Howard and Ewan McGregor and Usher and oh boy, I can't think of them all, but yeah, it was a pretty. So all of a sudden, I was keeping rockers from the '70s alive and working with a lot of actors. That was really fun. But the bummer was, could I move out of my apartment? No. I mean, I was training one person at a time. I think I went from $15 an hour to about $115 an hour or per session. But when you start, in LA, and then you go to West LA, and then you go to Malibu, and Malibu you go to Hollywood, and then Hollywood you go to Venice. It was brutal on my cars. And I had 2 cars because they broke down all the time because I was driving around town so much.
You had a backup car.
I needed a backup car.
That's awesome.
I had a '66 Mustang convertible, red, rally sport, pretty groovy car. But the transmission would go out, the engine would go out, the brakes would go out. And then I had a beat up old '84 white Land Cruiser that was like riding a boat all over town. It took like 40 turns to get the thing to take a left.
Wow.
But it was a pretty cool life. I set my own time, my own hours. I was still going on auditions. I was still booking things once in a while. At that point, I was taking class with Brian Reese. Brian Reese is over on Franklin. Audition stuff where you just get the sides. You got a half an hour. Get outside. We're doing our lines, and you get in, and you got to blow the doors off the audition. And that was fun. You know what I mean? So. But I was always paying my dues and taking my classes and hoping that I'd get the big break. But where the bread and butter was through fitness.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of our encore chat with Mr. Tony Horton. God, I love that guy. My pick of the week for this week is a book called Infinite Possibilities by Mike Dooley. Some of you may recognize Mike Dooley's name. He's the guy who runs Notes from the Universe. If you're not getting those emails every day, I highly recommend them. Visit tut.com to sign up for those, or just Google Notes from the Universe and find the email sign up for those. But Mike is a speaker and author. He works in sort of the new age, law of attraction, secret type stuff. He works in that sort of realm of human potential. And he wrote a book called Infinite Possibilities. He also wrote a great book called The Top 10 Things Dead People Want to Tell You, which I cannot recommend enough. I actually think that book is better than the one I'm about to recommend, but they're both good. Infinite Possibilities, I finished last week, and it's a lot longer than it needs to be, but I really appreciated his thoroughness in driving home the importance of choosing your thoughts, choosing the stories that you tell yourself about the world, and taking as much of your energy as possible. And really, he only recommends 5 to 10 minutes a day, but I think the more you can check in with this, the better. Taking as much of that thought energy as possible and just living in an imaginary world in the future when you have the things you want, when you are enjoying the relationships you want to enjoy and the income you want to have and the career that you've created for yourself. Closing your eyes and just feeling those feelings. And what's great about this book is he describes why it's important not to get attached to how it happens or what it looks like when it happens, but to really just let the universe handle that part and just focus on what it feels like to have accomplished those things, to have created those things. If you're not on board with this kind of thing at all, totally understand. You can safely skip this pick of the week. But Infinite Possibilities by Mike Dooley. Link is in the show notes on our website. So that does it for episode 258 of Inside Acting. Jen Levin is our production coordinator. Gadali Gubarek is our marketing and web director. Deborah Smith is our community manager. I edited and mixed the episode today with help from longtime Inside Acting supporter Christopher Gray. Chris, thanks for your help. And Fern Lim designed our logo. Sign up for our weekly email dispatch and listen to all of our episodes at our website, insideacting.net. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. If you do nothing else, a favorable review on iTunes goes a really long way for us and helps other people discover the show too. Big thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo.com, the award-winning voiceover training system and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award for Best Voiceover Training 4 years in a row. These are the same classes that I teach in Hollywood each month. You can also access them online. And if you'd like to get started for free, go to vo2gogo.com/start, where you can access a free Getting Started in VoiceOver online class to help you add voiceover to your acting portfolio. Again, that's vo2gogo, the number 2, gogo.com/start. And a big thanks to you guys, our listeners. If you dig this show and you want to see it keep happening, make a one-time, no-strings-attached, tax-deductible contribution via PayPal, Square, or Venmo at our website. Just go to insideacting.net/contribute. Or, if you'd like, you can sign up as a member for $7 per month or $70 per year and get access to our private member message board, invites to exclusive events, fun freebies, special bonus content, and more. Just visit insideacting.net and click on the membership tab. And that does it for episode 258 of Inside Acting. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, breathe.